Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome to Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is a special Halloween edition that we're coming to you after the Ducks road trip here. After the homestand, we thought the Ducks would turn it around, do a little bit better on the road trip, and unfortunately, that's not the way that it worked out. We're going to go over all these games that happened, the last 5 here, and we're going to talk about the homestand coming up. Answer some of your fan questions, of course, and we're definitely going to address what is actually going on, because a lot of people are upset and they're frustrated and they're trying to figure out what's going on with the Ducks, Eddie, and we thought they'd do a little bit better on this road trip, but we ended up going out there and just not performing, Eddie. We ended up losing all 5 games starting in Nashville.
Yeah, and I don't think when 5 games ago when they were 1-2-1 that we thought they would come back off this road trip, losing all 5 games and being in dead last, tied with Toronto. But something when we were saying we were hoping they would, it's gonna be a tough road trip, but they were gonna pick up at least half, 3 wins out of 5 or 2 wins out of 5 on the worst case scenario. But the worst that could possibly happen did, and it started in this Nashville game. We talked about the game before against Minnesota, how it was a 4-1 win, but it didn't feel like a 4-1 win. Well, this certainly felt like a 5-1 loss, and Hudobin played poorly throughout this game. He got the whole start, didn't get pulled. Let in 5 goals on 29 shots. So not a great performance from him. And on the other end, in the other crease, Pecorine had a great game. Not like we challenged him too much. Put on 28 shots on him, which is a decent performance from him. And had a pretty good first period, something that we were hoping to build on. And then obviously you get into the second period, and it's reminiscent of last year. And Nashville scores 3 goals in that second period, and effectively ends the game, and score early in that third period, and they're up 4-0. And even when Sekach scored near the end of the game, there wasn't much hope from there.
Yeah, exactly. And the things that you touched on there, the first period, it seems like that's been okay for the Ducks this year. They haven't played terrible in the first periods. They outshot Nashville in this one 10-6 in the first period. They looked pretty decent coming out. Then, as you mentioned, the second period they got outshot 13-6, gave up the 3 goals, and at that point, the game was basically in hand for Nashville. Going to the third period, the Ducks really didn't put up much of a fight. It was good to see Sekach get a power play goal. The power play did wake up a little bit on the road trip, as we'll talk about. They ended up getting 3 goals in the power play in these 5 games, so that turned around a little bit. But it's very frustrating, Eddie, and a lot of fans are going to agree. They come out in that first period. And this season we've seen them. They've either come out, tied in a lot of situations, or up or down within a goal or whatnot, and they just can't carry the play over from the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, and this was one of the things last year that we couldn't explain, in how they would start so well and then just be poor in that second period. It happened all season. It even happened in the playoffs as well, and it was just something we couldn't explain. It's like what we've seen in whole games this season, where they just come out lazy and they uninterested. Even if they're leading, it seems like they feel like it doesn't matter how we play this period, we'll still end up winning the game. And they seem to rely on the fact that they had come back so many times in the third period last year. And you hear a lot of people say that's eventually going to catch up to them. And you heard the same things about Calgary, who had also done the same thing a lot of times in the third period. And it seems to be the case this season. They're not able to either score a goal in a good first period, or even if they do, they come out lazy in the second. Worst case scenario in Nashville, you get scored on 3 times, and that third period this year isn't there, and they've been pretty poor in the third period as well, continuing that play from the second. So it's not like they've had a chance to even bounce back.
Yeah, and speaking of bouncing back, you would think after this Nashville game, the Ducks played Minnesota again, the team that they got the win at home, and you think they would have came out in this game and played better, but actually they didn't. They didn't really perform as well at this game at all. I mean, 3 periods, the Ducks only had 15 shots. Minnesota outshooting them 2-1 in this game. Um, they gave up an early goal late in the first period, and then again the dreaded second period. Vanek getting a goal and Carter getting a short-handed goal, and again the Ducks found themselves down 3-0 after two, and basically the game in hand again. And it's just another tough performance. Anderson was the net. He did all that he could do in this game, but it was just weird. The effort was not there in this game, not as much as it was in the Nashville contest, Eddie.
Yeah, I know they had a goal disallowed 209 into the game, which they started off pretty good for the first 5 minutes of the game, even after having that goal disallowed. But the rest of the first period was just terrible. They outshot 15-3, and that was pretty much what happened for the rest of the game, getting outshot 30-15. Just another poor offensive display, getting shut out, and getting even on the power play, getting scored on shorthanded. It's just another just lackluster performance on offense, and it's something that we've come to expect so far, and it doesn't look like they're going to remedy this anytime soon with Getzlaf being out, and it's just a lot of question marks in how they're going to have to get out of this slump.
Yeah, I mean, the bright spot in this game was the penalty kill. The penalty kill, took out Minnesota. And all 5 opportunities that Minnesota had, they shut them down. And the Ducks' penalty kill has been one of the lone bright spots. They're at 90.9%, second best in the league behind the Islanders. But part of the problem too is, and we've seen this too, Eddie, is other teams, and you can't blame it all necessarily on the refs. And we have had we saw a few poor calls in a couple of these games on the road trip. But when the Ducks are killing so many penalties, it takes a toll on the team when you're out there and you're killing, 4 to 6, 8 minutes, in this period or that period. It's difficult. It's difficult to get a rhythm. It's difficult to get back on offense. It's difficult to get those opportunities to score because now you've been in such a defensive mode. Your guys are tired trying to kill off the penalties, and it's kind of a catch-22 because the Ducks have been so good at it, but at the same time, Eddie, they're not able to get back on the offense and get those opportunities they need to, get out of this drought.
Yeah, and there's no boost that you would expect from killing a penalty either. Usually a team kill a penalty, get a nice boost from that, and get a couple scoring chances. But it just seems you can see the frustration in guys, in particular, Corey Perry as well, and just the frustration on their faces. When another chance is saved, or they miss the net, or something doesn't go their way, and it's just something that is going to have to be worked on from the inside. That there's from the outside we can speculate all it is, if it's the coaching, the players, this or that. It's going to have to be something that comes from each individual player.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that, as soon as we get through the rest of these few games, and we got a lot of fan questions too. A lot of you, wanting answers, and we're going to try and give you the best answers that we can based upon what we've seen. The Ducks then went and played Chicago, and they actually did turn around this game. They played better. They outshot Chicago 39-24 in this game. They played to a 0-0 tie in regulation. Of course, they ended up losing it in the overtime session on the 3-on-3. But this game was a lot better performance. I mean, the Ducks outshot Chicago in the first period. In the third period, they were pretty even there in the second. Perry was getting opportunities. He hit the post, almost scored. Had another shot off the top of the net during this game too, Eddie. And this was one that the Ducks could have won. They played well. They went with Anderson again, even in the back-to-back scenario, and it just came up short.
Yeah, and you would expect him to go back to Anderson after the blowout in Nashville with Khudobin, and his confidence might be at a low. And Anderson had a great game this game. He only let in one goal, and it was off a miscue by Getzlaf along the boards, allowing Taves a lot of space, and just a great shot by Taves as well. But in the other end, Corey Crawford had a spectacular game. He stopped all 39 shots, and they played it. They played a pretty good game. They had a lot of scoring chances. no golden chances that you would say, oh, you got to score on those. But Corey Crawford kept him in the game, but the defensive, laziness by Getzlaf almost. I know it's 3-on-3 and it gets tiring, but Taves just pretty much walks around him and walks up front and gets a free shot on Anderson, and he makes him pay. Anderson does a good job covering it, but the shot's just too good, and it's a game where you think they should have won, and of course, with the way things are going this season, they only come out with 1 point.
Yeah, and part of that play at the end in the overtime obviously drew some criticism on Getzlaf, and then we found out the next day, what had happened, that he had an appendicitis, which he had surgery on, and it's now been taken care of. But it had been going on for 6 weeks, Eddie, and that was the concern that we had noticed, and we had heard some rumors about this that Getzlaf was not 100%. Nothing that we could ever necessarily confirm. But I really think that play kind of showed it. I mean, it didn't look like he had really any good side-to-side movement trying to guard Taves on that play. And, the turnover, he just kind of blindly passed it in the corner to give the Blackhawks that puck. So kind of frustrating. I definitely think that has affected his play. I'm not saying that that's an excuse and that's why he's not scored goals and whatnot, but I just think having him not at 100%, it's just been a bad thing for the Ducks, Eddie.
Yeah, and it's reminiscent of him with the sports journey in the playoffs near the end of the end of the Blackhawks series last year, where he just seemed lazy and got criticized a lot. People saying they strip the C from him because of how lazy he was playing, and then we find out it was because of his sports hernia, and a lot of the same criticisms to start the season this year. And then we find out he has appendicitis, which obviously would, if he's in pain, would restrict his side-to-side movements and his ability to turn. So if he comes back from this, back to his old self, then we would say, okay, well then obviously it's because of his sports hernia that he had before and appendicitis, and there's nothing to worry about. He's still the same player. But if he comes back just as bad and plays bad for the the month of November, then there's gonna be some real changes that have to be made.
Yeah, and we've got some fan questions about this that we're going to address a little bit later, but you're right, that's going to be interesting too. Um, so then, Anderson plays in these last two games, and then he comes into the Dallas game, the day after and plays in this one as well. So he's played, 3 games in a row with the back-to-back scenario as well. And this game, the Ducks started out super strong. I mean, we were really excited in this game. Santorelli gets a power play goal early. Horkoff gets on the board. Hagelin, who had not been 100%, he gets on the board too. The Ducks are rolling. It's 3-0. We think we have it in the bag, and the dreaded second period comes back. Eddie, power play goal by Sharp, shorthanded goal by Eakin. Ended up going, tied into the third, and then of course our favorite player on Dallas, Roussel, scores late in the game. And man, at this point, if you're not frustrated after going to overtime with Chicago, I mean, this one, Eddie, the Ducks deserved a better fate in this one. They should have at least gone to overtime after the second period, but the third period was, I think, really terrible for the Ducks in this game, Eddie.
Yeah, and you can't hope to keep a team like Dallas off the score sheet for the entire game. But the power play goal, that's acceptable. I mean, you're gonna give them chances on the power play. They're gonna make you pay. They're a great goal scoring team with the players that they have. But the shorthanded goal, again, just like the shorthanded goal a couple of games ago, it's something that's unacceptable. This power play is so bad offensively. You would expect them to at least be able to shore up defensively on a power play, and allowing a shorthanded goal again is just a backbreaker. And then not even a minute and a half later, Klingberg scores for Dallas, ties it up, and we go into the third period, and you're tied at 3, and after such a terrible second period, you would say, oh, well, we hope they can come out and play a good third period, but the momentum just seems to be sucked out of the game, and they get outshot 17-2 in the third period. Anderson does his best to keep them in the game, but in typical fashion, with a minute and a half left, Roussel scores, and they end up not even being able to get a point out of a game where they were leading 3-0 after the first period.
Yeah, and to make matters worse in this scenario too, at the end there, you see Roussel score, and it looks like his stick gets tangled up with Anderson's pad, and you hear Hayward talking on the TV there that they should have gone with the coach's challenge, and I have to agree with him in this scenario, Eddie. You got a minute 28 left to go. I don't think the goal would have been called back, but I think Boudreaux should have called a coach's challenge here because at that point, all the momentum's in Dallas' side. You call a timeout, you slow the game down, let the refs try and figure out, what's going on, and while they're doing that, you bring the players over to the side, and it's kind of a two for one. If you do a coach's challenge, you get the refs to review it. It doesn't look like it's going to get turned back, but maybe it does. And at the same time, you get some momentum on your side by slowing down the game and game planning for the final minute 28. Not to criticize Bruce, but it's just something that I would have considered at that time in the game.
Yeah, and it's worth considering, and after every goal that they're talking to the replay guys and seeing if it's worth it. And to be honest, I don't think it would have got overturned, but with a minute 30 left, you're really saving your time out for any time after that minute 30. I mean, you might as well give it a shot. There was a little bit of a push of the pad on the stick with the stick of Roussel, and you just give it a shot. The time it takes to review the play anyway, you get a makeshift timeout, and you can say, well, okay, guys, if this counts as a goal, we're gonna have to get one back here in the last minute and a half, and there's nothing to lose really. You do lose your timeout, but with a minute and a half left, down by one potentially, what are you saving it for? You might as well give it a shot and see if it goes your way.
Yeah, and it's just something that maybe could have changed a little bit at the end there. But even with the third period, I still thought the Ducks should have been able to go to overtime and get a point in this one. And a little bit frustrated, third period there for the Ducks. But you had two games in a row here where the Ducks played better and they just couldn't finish the deal. So they go on to St. Louis to finish this road trip. And they play a scoreless first period, and then they come out early in the second. You get Hampus getting a power play goal. The Ducks take the 1-0 lead. Things look good, and then unfortunately the Ducks had a 4-on-2 advantage. Got the puck turned over, and they give up a 2-on-0. And the guy that you don't want to give a 2-on-0 to is Tarasenko, who ends up burying it and tying the game. And so the Ducks go into the third period, and again they played better in this game. They were in it. They had a chance to again at least get 1 point, just like the previous two games. And unfortunately, this time, this crazy bounce goes off the boards, hits Anderson's skate, and redirects back in the net, and that's the game winner. And if that doesn't sum up really this entire road trip, Eddie, I really don't know what does.
Yeah, and I mean, the way this is going, Bruce summed it up at the end of the game. He said, "Dude, we need a break, and we're not getting them right now." And the fact that they're playing good enough to win, and I'd have to agree. In the Dallas game, they played good enough to win in the beginning of the game. I mean, in the end, they found a way to lose, but in this game, I think they played good enough to win, and same with the game against Chicago, and just getting a couple unlucky breaks in those games at least, and not being able to score, which is the main issue, is a problem. But in this game, that bounce off the boards, and it's so unfortunate for it to happen to Anderson the way he's playing, and especially how he played in this game too. To get that unlucky bounce off the boards right off his skated in is just terrible. But again, the bright spot from this game, penalty kill was 5 for 5. So I mean that's been the bright spot, like you said, all season. But still not being able to score any goals and getting some unlucky breaks is what's led really to that 1-7-2 start.
Yeah, and if you look at these last three games and say the Ducks did win these games or get some more points out of it, they if they would have won these last three, they would have been 4-5-1, almost 500. They would have been in the middle of the pack in the Pacific instead of being down at the bottom. So, I mean, it's half full, half empty when you look at the glass, kind of thinking there, but the Ducks could have been right in it right now after these three games. So they did play better. The question that a lot of people have is we all know what's wrong with the Ducks. It's not the penalty kill. It's not the defense. It's certainly not Frederik Andersen. We know it's the offense, but how do we fix that? And this has been, something that a lot of people haven't really given an answer for. And I'll tell you, Eddie and I talked about this before we did this show and talked about it with other people as well on Ducks and Pucks before. during this road trip when all the games have been going on and whatnot. And we've boiled it down to a few different things that we've picked up and seen. And there's not a cure-all. It's not like there's a light bulb that needs to go on and then the Ducks are going to do better. But there's some things that we've noticed and some things that we can talk about that the Ducks can improve on. And the biggest one, probably to start, we could probably start from the moment when they get a puck, either off a faceoff or a turnover or whatnot, Eddie, is really the passing. And this has been a problem with the Ducks. If you watch the Ducks consistently, they're not really connecting multiple passes in a row. They're not bringing the puck through the zone. They're trying to do the dump and chase and throwing the puck in the corner. And it's not working, Eddie. They're getting the puck down the other side of the rink, but they're just not sustaining the pressure, carrying the puck in and getting that forecheck going.
Yeah, and that's something that made them so successful last year was just hemming a team in their own zone for minutes on end, sometimes 2 or 3 minutes, and just being able to wear them out. And that comes up big later on in games. Was a big factor to why they were able to come back or win games in the third period, because by the time they got to that third period or late in the third, the team that they were playing against was just worn out. The whole time they'd be forechecking hard, they'd be recycling, and the cycle last year was the big part of the system, and that's just not there this year. And like you said, passing, entering the zone, and even when they get in there, especially on the power play, just a lot of wasted chances from guys, making that extra pass or trying to make the special pass or a no look pass, and it just ends up being a turnover and going the other way. And that's something they're gonna have to work on. And like you said, it's not like there's just gonna be a magic, turn the switch and they're gonna change and all of a sudden they're gonna win like 10 games in a row. It's gonna have to be something internal, and they're gonna have to get back to the way they were playing last year.
Yeah, and in addition to that, on the forecheck, we've seen this too. Is the Ducks will get a shot, and then it's like that's it. They'll shoot a puck, and okay, it didn't go in. They really need to figure out how to crash the net again and work hard. They're not getting the bounces. They're not getting to the rebounds. And a lot of that's the effort. You talked about it, Eddie. They at times seem a little bit lazy or a little bit carefree too much, and they're not really grinding it out. And that's part of the problem. And I think it's going to be even more of a challenge. We saw in the last two games, you have Getzlaf out now, so all the lines are getting even more juggled than they already were juggled, which Boudreau does, and that's a big problem. These players need to develop chemistry, and you can just tell on every single line there's no chemistry. None of the lines, they're not working, and I get what Boudreau's doing. He's trying to change up the players and put certain people in certain spots and do what they got to do. But it's a catch-22 because now you've got Getzlaf out. Now you're going to have to change the lines, Eddie, until they come back. And I really think until they can get at least the top two lines settled down, it's going to be tough because you're skating with different people every night and sometimes different periods too.
Yeah, and that's definitely an issue. But these guys are used to doing that in different teams, and obviously a big part of the issue this year is bringing in new guys to the lineup. But again, you can't blame all their struggles on bringing new guys in. There's a lot of other teams around the league who've brought in new players, and they're not doing amazing. Pittsburgh brought in 11 new guys, and they are struggling, but they're still above 500, and as well. Just it's starting out so slow. You can't blame it on bad luck either. Obviously, the St. Louis game, that bounce is obviously bad luck. But the reason they're 1-7-2 isn't the only reasons they're 1-7-2 isn't bringing in new guys and bad luck. They can't score goals, and the system they're playing with the players they have isn't working right now. Or all the players haven't adopted into the system, and then just plain and simple, the stars aren't playing. I mean, Kessler's not playing well. Perry, although having 3 assists, he still hasn't scored this season, and he's a main guy that we rely on for scoring. Silverberg was a guy we thought would score, 30 goals this season if he had a great year, and he hasn't started off well. And now with Getzlaf being out, who also didn't start well, it's just these guys got to get firing. These are the guys we expect to be the big producers this season, and nobody's stepping up in their place to score goals. So if nobody's stepping up, I mean these are the guys we got to expect to score.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's been a huge problem. You look at Kessler, Perry, and Getzlaff, the guys that you would think, the big three, really for the team that you would think that would be out there leading. And even with Getzlaff being out a couple games, those three players have gotten 6 assists combined so far in the season and 0 goals, which is just a complete shocker. Perry's gotten some more opportunities, but he hasn't gotten the bounces on some of those post shots, and Kessler's got a little bit more chances. But like we said, it's all about the quality. It's just really frustrating when the Stars aren't scoring and doing what they need to do. It's almost like a trickle down effect, Eddie. Like you said, the rest of the players, Silverberg hasn't been doing well. Hagelin finally got a goal, which was good, but I mean, it's the Stars aren't scoring, but the secondary scoring's not there either. I mean, it's just it's like top to bottom, with the exception of really Santarelli, and he's the leading scorer with 2 goals.
Yeah, and if you have to look at anybody who's played well, Anderson's at the top of the list, far top of the list, far and above everyone else. But I think Santarelli has been one of obviously probably the only good addition so far. I don't want to, say anything about Hagelin and Stewart, but their starts haven't been that great. But obviously, so the Ducks start hasn't been that great as a team. But Santarelli has played good. 3 points in 9 games isn't bad, and Lindholm at the same 3 points in 10 games isn't too bad for him either. But we've got to get the guys stepping up. I don't think everybody would say 10 games in we'd expect. Between Perry, Getzlaff, Kessler, and Silverberg, they'd have 0 goals. So that's something they're gonna have to work on the inside, and just like we said last year with how they were so bad in the second period, there's no real solution here. That there's no real obvious solution on how they're gonna fix it. They're just gonna have to figure out a way to score goals, and until they can do that, they're not gonna win any games.
Yeah, definitely, and that leads us to a bunch of the different fan questions we've had from all of you out there, and we'll get through a ton of them right now. One of them we had was we kind of talked about this a little bit was Brendan. Brendan asked about which players look the best and which has looked the worst. The best. I'm going with Anderson. I think everybody at home's going with Anderson because we know that he's done what he's had to do, and he's played great in the net. You can't fault him for all these games and what's going on. So, in terms of maybe forwards or defensemen, then we look to Santarelli like we talked about. In terms of not doing as well, Eddie, unfortunately, I have to go with Stewart. He's been invisible. It's been frustrating. He's been on so many different lines. He hasn't really produced or done anything, and it's going to be tough for him to get going. It seems like. I think we expected a little bit more. We saw him drop the gloves and get into a fight there on the road trip, but other than that, he hasn't really done much. So that's kind of my take on who's been doing well and not so well, Eddie.
Yeah, and there's no other choice really than Frederick Anderson for who's doing well, and that's something I think everybody can agree on. And you look on forward on defense, Santarelli is a good pick as well, and Lindholm like we mentioned before. But for who's doing bad, take your pick after that. I mean, Stewart's had 0 points in 9 games. I think the only reason I wouldn't pick him is just because, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we said he's in a similar situation to Semin is in Montreal. I mean, there's expectations for him to do, decently well. He has some potential, but, there's also a lot of risk in taking him, and there's definitely a chance that he's going to start the season with 0 points in 9 games. But I think, a guy that we expected to do really well, who started off poorly, is Silverberg. With 1 assist in 10 games, he has 20 shots. He's close to leading the team in shots. And when you have 0 goals on 20 shots, nothing's going right for you. And this is a guy we expected to, like you said, score 30 goals, get 50, 60 points in the season. In a good year for him. And it's just been a terrible start. And I think he's one of the worst guys that's been out there so far.
Yeah, and it's been a surprise, like you said. It's been a surprise with a lot of the players what's going on and what's happening out there in terms of their offensive games. It's just going to be something that they're going to have to turn around, like we talked about, the forecheck and the passing and working hard on the offense to get this team going. And that kind of leads us to our next question. We had Aaron ask us, when Getzlaff comes back, do you think he'll improve his game? And maybe help the Ducks. And I think he will. I think that he didn't play well in the beginning, obviously because of what was going on. with his appendicitis. He was talking about it and said that he had 3 or 4 episodes where he wasn't able to do what he could because of, the pain basically. So I think once that gets cleared up and he gets back, I think he's definitely going to improve. I mean, he can only go up from, 0 goals. So I think he's going to help the team. It's just going to be a question of getting him and Perry on track together on that top line, I think, Eddie. And if the Ducks can get that top line rolling and then, trickle it down, that's where they got to start.
Yeah, and it really all depends on how much his pain was preventing him from playing. I mean, we wondered the same thing at the end of the playoffs last year, and wondering the same thing now. If he comes back and the pain was one of the main issues in why he was playing bad, and he comes out and gets 5 points in his first few games, then I think we'll be like, okay, fine, he's back, and the pain was the issue, and he was never really playing that badly, skill wise. So. We'll just have to wait and see there, and hopefully by the time he comes back in the next few games, the team will have a couple more wins under the belt, and it won't be as much of an issue. But if they're still struggling, he's gonna have to come back and boost this team. He's the captain of the team, and he's gonna have to provide a real boost coming back.
Exactly, and it's going to be, a huge boost that he's going to have to provide, I think. And we think that he's going to be back hopefully later on this homestand. He's due to be out 4 to 12 days, and it's already been 4. So we doubt he'll play in the first game against Nashville. If he does, it'd be great, but it's probably not likely. But we hope to see him on the homestand and get the Ducks going. Another question, we had a few actually on Instagram this time around. We had one from C. Marlet who asks about Bruce Boudreau and whether or not he should be fired. And this is a question that a lot of you fans have been talking about, and I've seen the hashtag, fire Boudreau and all this other stuff. And Eddie and I are going to tell you, and you may not agree, but firing Boudreau is not the answer. It isn't, because my question to you, if you're sitting there listening and you're saying, well, Mike and Eddie, Boudreau needs to go. My question is, well, who are you going to put in charge then? Yeah, you might say McLean or Yanni, but I mean, it's not all entirely the coach's fault here. And all the players have come out this last week and have said that the players need to play and they need to do what they need to do, and that's score goals, which they're not doing. And they said that Bruce motivates them, and they're just not getting it done. Does that mean that he will get fired and maybe gone? Maybe. It depends on what happens realistically in this next week or two. Murray's come out and said that he's going to be patient, not make any rash decisions, Eddie. But on the other side of the coin, the stuff that's been going on lately, you have to think that the patience is going to wear thin at some point.
Yeah, and if you replace Bruce, like you said, you try and replace him, say you replace him with McLean or with Yanni. I mean, they're all contributing to the problem right now as well. I mean, obviously the big issue is the players, but you replace them with McLean or Yanni. I mean, they're gonna play. They're gonna obviously coach to their style, but they're Yanni's not there right now, but um, with McLean right now having he's helping coach the power play right now, which is struggling, and he's helping coach the offense, which is the main issue. And putting him in charge might not even change anything. It might just make it worse. So, I mean, you look at out there and who's available outside the organization, and you try and tell me a better coach with a better track record than Bruce Boudreau right now, and there aren't any out there. Columbus just resorted to signing John Tortorella, which is a big surprise, and really they had to do something. They started out 0-8, so I mean, there was no choice for them. But I think with Murray coming out saying that he's going to be more patient and he's going to wait. But I mean, how long can you wait if they lose these next 3 games in a row? I mean, like you said, his patience might wear thin.
Yeah, and then we'll have to see what happens. I mean, there's there's really no quality people out there, so I don't know if they would go within or not. I'm really just hoping that the Ducks start winning games and we can stop talking about this. I mean, it seems to be the hot topic throughout all the social media, and that's all I've really been hearing on all the forums and the pages and whatnot. That most of them that I actually run or co-admin. Another question we had on Instagram from Tim Jones 949. He asks, what's the chances of the Ducks pulling out of this nosedive and actually making the playoffs? We talked about this a little bit. I mentioned this in one of my posts too earlier in the week. The Ducks started this season 1-7-2, which is identical to the 96-97 season. Obviously, the scoring was a little bit different back then. There wasn't overtime losses and shootouts and whatnot like there were now. But after 10 games back then, the Ducks had 4 points. The Ducks ended that season 3 games over 500 at 36, 33, and 13, second in the Pacific, fourth in the Western Conference, and they made the playoffs for the first time in team history. Ended up beating back then the Phoenix Coyotes, and then they obviously went on to the second round, lost to Detroit. But it happened, and the Ducks actually did pretty well down the stretch. So the chances of the Ducks pulling out of this, they can do it. They can pull out. I mean, it's 10 games. They can get back in it. Eddie will talk about this, but the Pacific Division is actually pretty pathetic right now. If you look at it, they're not doing as well. So they can get back in it, especially with each division having to have at least 3 seeded teams in it. Eddie.
Yeah, there's a chance, and like you said with the Pacific, other than LA right now winning 7 games in a row, being so poor, and only Vancouver really being over 500. Arizona and San Jose sitting at 5-5, and Calgary just beating Edmonton tonight, getting their third win, and Edmonton being 4-8-0. There's a chance, and you just got to get third in the Pacific because you would expect this year for 5 Central teams to make it. So there's definitely a chance, and with them struggling, you don't expect all these teams to struggle for the whole season. I think you would expect San Jose to pick it up eventually, but there's a chance, but the chances are slim historically. Only 4 out of the last 66 teams to be 4 or more points out of the playoffs come November 1st have made it. But this is a team you'd expect to make it. They have the talent. A lot of people picked them to win the Stanley Cup. So if any team's gonna make it, I think this is a team that has a good chance.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads us, to the next question that we had from Sandy on Instagram. And she asked, what are the 3 positives that you can look at from the Ducks this season so far? And there actually are positives. I know it's hard. You look at it and go, really, what are the positives? But if you look at it, you got to look at Frederik Andersen, right there. He's been your guy. He's played extremely well. Obviously, the record doesn't show it, but goals against at 2.05, save percentage 932. He's done everything he can back there. He's had maybe a couple goals here and there that he wanted back, but overall, you really can't fault him. So if you're going to go with one of the positives, Frederik Andersen's your positive. Number 2, you got to go with the penalty kill. We talked about it earlier in the show. The penalty kill is second in the league. So that's not the issue. The Ducks are, they're maybe taking too many penalties, but they're not getting burned by them. So the penalty's been the penalty kill has been there, and so has the defense. And then the third positive we touched on in the last question is it's early, Eddie. The chances aren't great, but if they're going to go through a slump, I'd rather them just get it out of the way in October and hopefully to turn on something in November and get it going.
Yeah, and at least there's only one thing to fix, and that's goal scoring. I mean, at least one half of the special teams is good, and it's near the top of the league in the penalty kill, and goaltending is great, and defense is relatively okay, and the real issue is goaltending. I mean, is scoring, and that's something we can fix and turn around, and will lead to us winning some games. And like you said, it's early, and there's definitely a chance to turn it around from here. And if this team can start putting some goals in the back of the net, then they're going to be okay.
Yeah, and looking forward to this homestand. The Ducks are going to play the Predators first, which I mean, it's not going to be obviously an easy task after losing the first time they played them. But the Kings just played them already, so they're going to be in back-to-back scenarios. So the Ducks, should be able, with a couple of days off, to have some healthier legs and be able to, play a pretty good game against the Predators. They also have the Florida Panthers and the Blue Jackets coming to town, 2 other teams that haven't been doing as well either, Eddie. So these are some games that the Ducks definitely can win. They should be able to win at least 2 out of these 3 at home. I don't want to give any absolutes because nothing's given this season. But these 3 home games coming up, they should be able to play better, and then they go on the road for one game against the Sharks before coming back home, which that one may be a little bit more of a difficult task. But I really look for the Ducks to turn it around this next 3 to 4 games, Eddie, starting out at the homestand.
Yeah, and not having to face Rene most likely on Sunday is going to be beneficial to them, and hopefully they can get some goal scoring, and it'll lead over into the next few games. I mean, Florida's a decent team this season. I think they're above 500, so there's a good chance that's going to be a tough game as well. But that's a team we should be beating. And then you go on to face Columbus, doing a little bit better under John Tortorella, but still 2-8-0, and it's definitely a team that we should be winning against. So if we can pick up a win tomorrow and ride that momentum into the next two games, you could see 3 games in a row leading into San Jose, and it all depends on how good they're doing and if we can carry the momentum past that. But I definitely think, to get out of this slump, you got to win at least 3 of these 4 next games.
Yeah, and I think the other point about that too is to save Bruce's job too, Eddie. We talked about it. There's not a lot of options out there for him, but if the Ducks continue on the slide that they're going, it's going to be difficult for Murray to justify keeping him around.
Yeah, for sure. The patience is going to eventually wear thin, and if you lose this game against Nashville, lose against Florida, and then especially if you go into Columbus and you lose there too. If you come out of this road trip coming up and you've lost 3 of the last 4 games, then it's going to be only so long you can be patient for.
Yeah, exactly. And the Ducks should turn around. They got to do the things that we talked about. They got to work on the passing, work on the forecheck, and work on just hustling towards the net, hustling for the rebounds, and that's what they got to do. And if they can do that and they can create some more of their own puck luck and bounces, they'll get it going, and they'll be able to get in these games. The last 3 games, the Ducks could have come out with at least a point in each of them, and they could have won. All 3 of them they could have won, and if they did, the Ducks would be in a lot better shape. We wouldn't be talking about them, being as far down as they are. Like we said, in the Pacific, it's not as competitive. They'd be right in the middle of the pack there. So there's still hope for the Ducks. They still can do it. Like we said, the 96, 97 Ducks can do it, so they can do it too. We're also going to have some more watch parties too in November. I don't have the exact dates yet. We'll put those out when I find out those dates. We had a couple of them during the week, which they weren't as popular as the weekend one, obviously, because the week games are difficult with the 5 o'clock start. People trying to come after work and stuff. But we still had a good number of people, and it was fun. And Phil Hewitt showed up with his wife and daughter in one of them, and we had a really good time. So that was good, and we'll keep doing those as well. And the only other real thing that I can point out, Eddie, and we've talked about this, and we know people on social media can turn negative real quick, is and I know it's difficult, but we got to stay positive, people. I put out that note earlier in the week, about supporting the Ducks win or lose, and that's what Eddy and I and everybody at Ducks and Pucks, we're gonna be here the whole season. We're gonna cover the games. We're gonna do the podcast and do everything, win or lose. Obviously, we hope to turn it around, which we expect them to. But at the same time, one little side note for those of you that don't know, I do run a lot of the Facebook pages or groups, and I just want you all to be mindful of the stuff that you guys talk about on there, and be respectful to everybody. I had a lot of issues coming up lately with the team not doing so well, and it's unfortunate. We need to stick together and support the team and support each other, because that's the right thing to do. And you know what? This is hockey, and we all have our real lives out there, and there's going to be other difficult challenges that you're going to face besides hockey. So we can deal with this. We can get through it. The Ducks are going to get better. The question is when, and we hope it's going to be soon and not later. With that, we'll be back in hopefully another week and have some more wins to talk about and recap instead of some losses, Eddie. And hope everybody had a safe Halloween, and we'll see you in a little bit. Let's go, Ducks.